Welcome to another edition of the Pair Genius podcast. I want to say that anybody listening at home is obviously a genius by now.
You think so?
Episode 5, I feel smarter.
I don't know if I feel smarter.
Oh, I'm getting smarter, all right. And I'm going through all of our clips on this software, and there's a lot of funny moments. And yet, at the same time, there's a lot of precious moments that have not been captured.
What do you mean precious moments?
There's some great takeaways inside the episodes that aren't getting shared on the reels.
Oh, yeah. You can't share it all.
No, but I think they're great to have little snippets to, wet your whistle, if you were, to come in and listen to us a little bit. So, my dear, oh man, we have an interesting idea for our episode today.
Yeah, it's one of those things that it's come across my plate a few times and I can't ignore it anymore. So we should just probably talk about it.
Okay, hit me with it.
The grief of breaking up.
I
I have a couple of friends who are going through it right now, so.
That's sad. I don't like that.
No, it's not a fun topic, but worth talking about because there's a whole bunch of questions that come up with, am I grieving my relationship? Am I grieving who I was in the relationship? Am I making space for a new version of me to emerge? Is there a chance I'll get back together with this person? There's some deep questions.
Little known fact, we broke up once.
So that's why at first I'm like, I don't think we can do an episode on breaking up because we're definitely not experts in it. However, we did break up once in our 30 years together.
It was sad. It was I think it was 3 weeks or a month that we were kind of broken up.
Yeah, that was your call. That wasn't mine.
Oh, all right. Let's unpack this. I was going to say that you were like this needy thing that was driving me crazy.
Okay, so let's seriously rewind time here. How old were we when we broke up?
I would say, first year of university?
So
18?
18?
18, was it?
Okay, let's say 18. 17 or 18, somewhere around
17
there.
or 18, yeah.
We had been dating for a long time. Keep in mind, this is a year before we get engaged. So what happened in that moment? So I did say that it was you who called it off. What brought you to that?
And I know exactly what it is. I know exactly.
Okay, don't make it a funny answer. Give it to me. What actually was it?
We don't do distance well. You were going to university. I went back to high school to get some credits for engineering. So I went back and I did a whole bunch of, I did about 5 different courses in order to get into engineering. And we were basically living a long distance relationship.
Even though our neighborhoods were not that far apart, but you were going to one end of Winnipeg and I was going to the other end of Winnipeg. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, well, you would study all day. You would have to study all night.
I was teaching in the evenings.
And yeah, that was actually really difficult. And there was a lot of separation. And you and I don't do well with long distance.
No, and especially the younger version of myself, where I was probably definitely suspicious of what you were doing with all that time that we were not together and jealous of who you were spending that time with. I know that probably the separation brought out, our time apart brought out the worst qualities of me, and maybe that pushed you to then say, we have to take a break.
Yeah. Do I have regrets? I don't know if I regret it because we ended up together in the end.
Yeah, but then you're saying that it's based on the outcome. So
Right.
Before you tell me about regrets,
Okay.
What did you do during the time that we were not together anymore? Actually, I don't even know if I know the answer to this. I don't know if I ever asked you what you did for those 3 or 4 weeks that we were not together.
It's so crazy because I know exactly what I did. I just went to school and I worked and that was it. My life actually didn't change other than not talking to you on the phone because we were already living these distant lives that it really didn't impact anything.
So there was an energetic cut.
Yeah. Yeah. Other than, I guess I didn't have to worry about you and you probably didn't have to worry about me.
Oh, don't assume things on what was going on with me.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. I know how jealous I am of a man. I am a jealous man. And
were you worried at all that I was with somebody else during that time?
I don't know. I can't remember that. And I can't remember. Oh, wow. I should have prepared better for this. No, but you go.
Well, the only thing that I did during that time was puzzle. I honestly know that my love of puzzling now is because of that time that you and I were apart. I stayed up till 2, 3 in the morning. I watched Coach. You remember the show?
Yeah.
I watched that and I puzzled. I just sat there and I puzzled. And there was so much time where I wasn't doing anything except puzzling and I was in my mind, and it was almost like a healing time just to be with myself, and the puzzling kind of forced me just to sit still. And even now when I puzzle, it's funny because even now when I puzzle, that's exactly what I'm doing. I'm just making it so when I'm puzzling, the kids don't come and bother me. They know, oh, mom's puzzling, so we're going to go do something else, right? Like it gives me the space in a very small house where it's almost like a bubble. And then nobody comes in there, and then I have the time to, deal with my inner world. So that's the only thing I did while we were apart. I remember I watched, what is that movie with Val Kilmer and the Lions? It was so terrifying. I'm like, how could I have watched something so ridiculous and terrifying? I can't remember. I can't remember what it's called. But in any case, I mean, I did a few things that I would normally not do. So maybe that was the purpose for me of the breakup. But I was definitely grieving you. I missed you so badly. I knew it was a mistake. I'm like, this is not how this story ends. And I was in a serious grief process. I have to say, too, my bedroom was in the basement in my parents' house. And I stayed underground in the darkness, puzzling and crafting and sitting with my budgie. In the protection of being underground. So it's like, okay, I'm really grieving. I need this space to be by myself and figure myself out.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm fascinated by how good of a memory you have, and you always have. It's so funny. Like you're trying to get me to like recall things. Like, oh no, I need to eat more vitamins. I need to have a better memory. But I would say, my most honest answer is I probably just did the NPC thing. I woke up, I went to school, I did my homework, I played video games at night because that's what I was into, and that was about it. And I'm sure, like any relationship or any habit, like if something happens and I'm excited to tell somebody, you're obviously the first person I want to tell. And I know that that's when it would pang my heart the hardest. And knowing it's like you have that person that when something cool happens or when something bad happens, who's that first person that you go to? And you were my person.
So I'm thinking that maybe this is telling of your grief process, that instead of dealing with your grief, you turn into the NPC, as you would say, right? Like you just kind of shut down and find things to keep you busy, and it's avoidance.
I'm all about distractions, procrastination. I can pretty much shut my heart off if I have to with just ridiculous distractions in order to protect it. That's sad.
Well, I mean, I guess that's what you did while we were broken up. And then so what did you just say about, when you had something that happens and you want to share it with that person? So that actually did happen to you in that time. And I think that's what brought you back to me.
Okay, I just can't remember what it is.
Are you serious? You don't remember that your family adopted a kitten and you were like, oh my God, I have to tell you about it? And you had me come over and play with the kitten.
Really?
And then we got back together. You don't remember that?
No, I don't.
Dude.
Well, I remember the kitten, but I don't remember that being the thing that brought us
back. That was the thing.
God, I love cats. I love cats even more now.
Even more than me, apparently.
What's weird, though, is you wouldn't let me bring the cat with us when we got married.
It wasn't your cat.
It was my cat. Trust me, that cat picked me. And you saw what happened to that poor cat when I moved out.
I don't remember having a conversation about the cat even coming with us. Never mind me not letting you.
Oh, no, because the conversation was, I'm bringing my budgie with me. I'm like, okay, well, I don't want the cat to kill him, so.
Well, the budgie didn't last too much longer. And then he was 12 years old, and then he died, and then we replaced him with 2 cats.
But then we got our cats, and we had our family.
So there's a reason that it worked out that way, just like everything else in your life. So breaking up is a growth opportunity. It's a time to go inward and sit in your grief and feel it out and figure what you're meant to do.
I think it would be interesting to bring up the Yukon right now, because I had an opportunity to go up there and work for the utility. And I was actually playing with the idea of it. And it's interesting that we're talking about this right now and having that realization that you and I don't do well, and it would have hurt us horribly. Like, we're meant to be together.
That would have been a punishing decision, and any decision made out of punishing yourself or others is not going to be the right one.
Yeah. It would have been an interesting adventure, but not alone.
For you.
And but I also had the opportunity years ago when we moved to Alberta for me to go work in Saudi Arabia for at least a year, and they were going to give me all this money, and like it was going to be a pretty high profile job, and something said no.
Other than me?
Other than you, there, even my gut was just like, oh man, something. If I go and I'm on the other side of the world from you, that's not going to end well.
So I think that, so you and I are an example of two people, and like we've mentioned before, who chose to come into this experience together because our odds of expanding the way our souls want us to works better together.
And if there is a weakness in our armor, it would be distance.
So
Like, we don't do well with that.
we're aware of it, but we do end up coming back together because that's part of our journey. There are so many people out there who maybe define a relationship in a different way, or don't recognize that the relationship comes in so that they can learn something in the moment, and then that relationship is over.
Hmm.
And that makes space for going inward, figuring it out, and coming and emerging from that space new, refreshed, a little bit more wise, and able to choose the next person, if there's going to be a next person, differently. And maybe that's meant to last, or maybe that's just meant to be another chapter. Because relationship is not necessarily about expanding both of your souls at the same rate. Not everybody has that agreement. That's an agreement that our souls made before we came here. So maybe the agreement that you made is different. Maybe it's made with different people, like a bunch of different people. Maybe you've made an agreement to come and experience heartbreak so that you can be of service to people in a deeper capacity.
And life is hard. It's never 50-50 between the two people. Each of you want different things. If you're shooting for a huge career, or you're studying, or you have all these huge goals, your relationship at some point takes a little bit of a back seat, and it has to be okay with the other person to see, I guess, the foresight, to see the vision for what your lives would look like in the future if you let your partner, or whatever, if you decide that you were to go and do that thing on your own, what it would look like when you come back together. Would that person be better off if you let them go?
So I think in that vein, I should probably bring up Stonewall. So Stonewall chapter for us was when we built our house. This was meant to be our dream house. We were going to put roots down and raise our children there. It wasn't that far from Winnipeg, so we were close enough to family, but a little bit far enough away that we could have a little bit of space to figure ourselves out. And it wasn't that. It was really negative, really stressful. My body was failing. I was having all sorts of kind of mental problems alongside the physical. So what I did was I went and got antidepressants. Now, the doctors, in all of their Western wisdom, thought, we're going to try a bunch of different kinds. We're going to try this one and see how it goes. Well, that didn't do well for you. We're going to try this one. I was a lab rat for years, probably 2 or 3 years of popping this medication, which not only numbed my emotional body, but it ended up numbing my physical body. My brain was numbed, and all of my sexual bits, 100% numbed. 100%. So what does that do to the relationship, right? Like, something that was not about you and I all of a sudden turned into something about you and I, where we could not connect sexually. We could not connect on even a mental level because I was so numbed and blurred, and I didn't know what was going on. I didn't have the capacity to feel anymore. And in that moment, I went to a therapist and I'm like, I think I'm going to have to leave him because I'm not happy. Something's wrong. Like, there's no connection anymore. That was one of the most scariest, even now saying it out loud to you. I don't know if I've ever even said that out loud to you before. It was so awful and so terrifying. But when you're that confused and you don't know what's going on in your life, you're willing to almost let everything go to figure it out.
Yeah, and it was, I mean, it was even harder for me because I'm not in your mind. I'm not, all I'm doing is going to work. All I'm doing is trying my best to take care of the kids. And it was, it was surreal to watch you go through this hell on earth.
Yeah, and I think what ended up happening was I ramped up the insecurity in you, and you had a feeling, a gut feeling that this was becoming very serious very quickly, and so you latched on even harder.
Mm.
Like it was almost animalistic in the latching on, and that was driving me even further away.
It was, wow. Yeah, I mean, what kind of reflex is it to, if you have absolutely no control, you try and gain control as by any means necessary.
Yeah, and when you're in that space and you're willing to sacrifice your relationship, it forces you, I think, into almost pre-grief, where you have to feel what it would feel like to let it go and be okay with that decision to let a marriage die or a relationship die. And so I went through it, I felt it, and I think because I allowed myself to go that deep into despair, despair is a little bit negative, but like I really went very far inside of me and let myself feel the entire range of grief. And in that, it's almost like I have the phoenix popping into my mind because I was able to rise from the ashes. And from there, the idea of Europe came up, that we have to leave. We have to change our life. It doesn't have to be the death of our marriage, but it is going to be the death of this chapter. And we're going to do something so wildly different that it'll drive us back together in a really strong way, because now we are selling all of our things and the house that we built and uprooting our kids from our families, and both of our parents were going through cancer at the time, so it was a really difficult decision.
It was difficult, and at the same time, I've never felt more alive
It was the right decision.
in my entire life. Like, I was so okay with telling my boss that this is it, this is my last year, and I got all these different confirmations, all these different signs. And when we left, it was pretty much our wedding anniversary. The day that we left, everything just worked out well. And when you know it, we stepped off the plane in Ireland, and our new lives began, and we didn't even look back for a minute.
What's the first thing I did when we stepped off the plane and our new life began? I slept for what, 19 hours? I've slept
Oh yeah,
like I've never slept before. Honest to God, that was my bare hibernation moment.
I would say probably 14 hours you slept.
It was something so absurd that you and the kids actually got up, went out for dinner, came back. I was still completely gone to the world. I just couldn't come out.
Me and the kids walked around Ireland. We went to Irish McDonald's. We went through all these different parks, and the kids are like, "This is weird. Mom's not with us." I'm like, "Yeah, it is kind of weird. We went all the way to Europe, and Mom's just going to turn into a hibernating bear." But
I mean, it's weird that I'm not with you, first of all, but second of all, that I'm sleeping. When did you ever see me sleep when it's not nighttime?
that is weird. I never thought about that. I do remember us being on this double-decker bus, taking this tour, and we're all passed out.
That was like, right, we're so crazy. We got off the plane and got right onto a double-decker bus to tour Dublin. Like, man, that was something.
We were very ambitious.
Well, and inexperienced. We had never been to Europe before. That was a huge, I want to say vacation trip, but it kind of
It
wasn't.
was a huge journey for sure.
Journey, that's a better word.
And yeah, it was something else. So I did want to rewind back though, because we kind of skipped over something, and I think it was really, really important that you and I went to couples counseling a few times so that I could have a third party explain to me what was kind of going on with you.
Especially because, as you know, when I get emotional about something, the communication goes way down for me, and it just comes out in these bursts of emotion that don't make sense. So the psychologist did help with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny, not funny, but it's crazy how we've gone through this meat grinder. That's why I call it the meat grinder, because it was so difficult. And the irony of creating the episode of Are We the Perfect Pair? It's supposed to be ironic because I don't think there is such a thing as a perfect couple. I think it's understanding that there's these different chapters and how you're gonna either go through it together or you do break up and then you start new chapters.
Yeah, and I think that it really is helpful, again, to bring the astrology into it. I got an email from Sandy saying that her synastry readings are on special right now.
Is that to find out how sinister you are?
No, it's to find out how your charts work together.
Oh, synergy.
So it's like, right, it was like exactly what you and I had done,
Okay.
which we already knew, so it was more of a confirmation session for us. But,
Okay.
I think that if you're unsure in your relationship, or you feel like you're really meant to be with this person, but right now you're not, maybe a synastry, now that you've said like
Synergy.
sinister, it's all
It's a synergy thing.
to have that done, to have Sandy or somebody out there who is an astrologer
Yeah.
come in and say, here is the path that maybe you're meant to be on, and here's the weaknesses and the outside influences that could potentially destroy what you have together. Because we had that one line, so we have like this perfect chart, but there was one red line, and it was the same for both of us, and it was a family line. I'm like, yeah, that makes sense.
Oh, it makes total sense. I was gonna say that, man, I just can't believe how much my heart hurts right now. It's like we opened up a couple things I wasn't surprised. I don't know. I put these things back on the shelf, and I don't take them off the shelf too often. And
Because that's your grief process, is not to not to feel it.
yeah, it hurts my heart though that you're in the basement, thinking about you in the basement, puzzling, and not having me, your person to talk to. I mean, you had friends that you could talk to, but it just isn't the same when it's your person.
It's weird because I was even thinking, when we were broken up, did you spend more time with your friends because of it? I know that I didn't.
I was a recluse.
I was a recluse as well.
Yeah, you'd think that it's like, oh, I'm gonna go out and party and sow my oats. It was the opposite. I guess I was in mourning. I guess I was in mourning.
So I think that's something that some people break up, and you hear about that person going off and having like crazy sexual escapades and all sorts of, shallow kind of
Yeah.
pleasureful in the moment experiences.
Things that you think that are gonna fulfill you, and they end up not.
And you and I did the exact opposite. So I wonder if there is a degree of grieving, right? Or some part of you knows that maybe the relationship wasn't exactly right, so it's okay to go off and have a party.
Maybe it was our codependency got so high that it was a chance for us to rediscover ourselves because we were so young.
And you should probably make a note of that codependency needs to be an episode, because that has come up a few times in our entire relationship.
Oh, for sure, yeah. Going back to what you were saying about my frustration and trying to get control, that was more of a codependency and a fear thing for sure. I knew what we had was worth fighting for, and it's not that I can make you. I was just trying to understand where you were coming from because you were unrecognizable to me.
And to myself.
It came to a point where you were unrecognizable, and I think that's where I was the most scared.
I almost feel like those moments of complete devastation in your inner world have to happen. And as within, so without, right? My outside world was falling apart. I was falling apart on the inside. It has to happen so that it can move you towards making a very big move.
Yeah.
I'm not talking a physical move. I'm talking about a move in regards to change in your life.
Right.
You've been going a certain direction, and your soul kind of drops in and says, whoa, this has to change because it's not what we signed up for.
So picture this. You wake up you're living in the Arctic in the middle of nowhere.
Are we back to the Yukon?
No, I'm not going that direction, but I'm just saying, like, imagine you're like living this day-to-day life where you're not happy, and all of a sudden you wake up the next day and you're in Ireland and there's no work. Like, you don't have to work for the next 6 months, and it's just you as a family, and all you have to do is bond and make adventures together. That was the greatest gift. Every day, I remember waking up every day and being grateful that you were right beside me and that we were in this strange new place, and every day was an adventure, and we didn't even plan every day. Every day was just like a spontaneous thing that we would do. And honestly, seriously, like, my heart, my life, everything was so much better that we got to bond. There was no there we didn't have to worry about the house. The house was gone. We didn't have to worry about work. That was done. Like it was just us blogging, traveling, being together with the kids for 3 straight months. And it was honestly, if anybody can do that, I would just write the book on how to like retire at 38 for a year and just bond with your family. Because I feel like from like 20 to 40, all you're doing is working and driving your kids around and just doing the mundane shit that nobody wants to, like, you just get on this stupid hamster wheel because everybody else is doing the stupid thing.
Yeah, I think that, you know, that huge move for the kids and all of the 3 months of pure bonding time, they were little still, 5 and 8. So it helped us set up a foundation within the four of us. The foundation was not the home. The foundation was not the jobs that we had. It was not the friend circles that we made. It was a foundation of how the four of us were going to move from place to place and experience and experience. And you would think that it would be scary waking up in a different place often, but
Sure.
it wasn't, because the four of us were so good together. That foundation was so solid that by the time we landed in Alberta, it was okay, let's start a new life. We're good to put down roots here for a little while. Now, having said that, Laura was really angry, and she, coming out of that adventure, went into a very deep grieving process. She was grieving the house that we had built. She was grieving her friends and all the family that we left behind. So that was really difficult watching her go through it. But because we had set up that foundation, she was able to do that in a very safe environment.
She was angry at us for a long time.
Years.
Especially about my mom. And then with my mom dying, yeah, there was a lot of guilt on my end. There was a lot of guilt. But I told her, I said, you know, Grandma wants you to live. She doesn't want you to stay and just watch her die. That's not the meaning of your life. I tried to explain that to her. How do you explain it to an 8-year-old that your grandmother is way more excited to see you travel the world and see the things that she saw while she's still alive, so that you can talk to her about it?
Yeah, and you can't tell kids anything. They have to actually experience it for themselves. So all those times that we sent them back home for the summer, back to Winnipeg for the summer, they got one-on-one time with our families, and they would come back, and honest to God, the first words out of their mouth were, so good to be back home in Alberta. They love it so much here, and they've seen, especially Alora, who's 16, has eyes wide open as to what I actually had to leave behind and why I had to leave that behind. And she's okay with it now. And it has brought her a lot of peace. And her and I have had this reconciliation moment that I think has catapulted our relationship from mommy-daughter to mom and daughter to friends.
It just came to my mind that it's funny that some relationships need distance in order to survive and some don't need distance.
Yeah, I definitely needed the distance. But distance from you would be catastrophic.
Yeah, it's funny. I say that our bond is so strong, that my love is so strong for you, but if we're not together, the flower dies, you know, the entity dies.
And I think that it was, I hate to say that it's easier then, but it was easier in a sense that there was no social media. Cell phones were not a thing. So it's not like I could just pick up the phone and call you because you'd be at school or on the bus or walking or
Right.
whatever. When we broke up, it was a hard energy cut. There was nothing else there.
There was no email even.
There was nothing. Like, you and I split up in a time where that stuff was so new, we didn't have access to it.
Right, yeah, I mean, but I know us. Like, when I'm traveling, I could Zoom you or we could talk. We're terrible on the phone together. We're not a good phone couple.
I mean, you're very good on the phone. I'm terrible on the phone. And I think that I bring that energy to it, and then it ends up being not a fun experience.
Yeah. That's interesting. What else did you want to talk about?
Grief in a relationship.
No, I meant according to that. So we went to Europe, came back.
I mean, yeah, I'm trying to think of like other grief moments that you and I have experienced, but I guess apart from losing friends, I mean, COVID brought up an insane amount of grief. Oh my God, because your mom died right at the beginning of COVID. Like, us going to see her and trying to say goodbye to her was a thing because they didn't want us to. They wouldn't let us in.
I had to pretend. So this is so funny. Like, let's open up the box of amnesia. I had to pretend that I isolated for 2 weeks. And in Alberta, you already couldn't go into a Tim Hortons without wearing a mask. And then I go into the not Brandon Hospital,
Winnipeg.
St. Boniface Hospital in Winnipeg. And I said, okay, give me the mask, give me the gloves, whatever, to go see my mom. Oh, did you quarantine for 2 weeks? Yes. Okay, just go up. You don't need any PPE, nothing. I'm like, okay. So I just went up and just like this, and spent half a day with my mom. And meanwhile, the rest of the world is just going absolutely bananas. And as my mom was finally dying in September, I think that's when it really ramped up in Winnipeg, and it would have been impossible to see her. And luckily, my dad got to be there with her when she died. And yeah, I just wouldn't wish that on anybody. But
And that's just one story out of hundreds of thousands of people who could not say goodbye to their loved ones.
that's insane. Yeah.
Like, what kind of grief? What does that do to your grief? What does that do to the natural grieving process?
I think that there is this collective pain from that. And I think, just like my heart, that a lot of people bottled it up, put it on the shelf, and they are refusing to deal with how insane that time was. It's like, oh, it's better not to look back at that. Well, if you forget your history, then you're doomed to repeat it.
I am not that person who puts it back on the shelf. I was so angry and very vocal about everything that was happening, but they had signs up, provinces. It's like states. There's no actual line like in the ground.
It's all make believe.
Like, it's ridiculous. So from province to province, they had signs up. Oh, you're not allowed to enter here if you haven't been vaccinated. I'm sorry, what? Like, are you insane? Like there was so yes, we were grieving your mother dying, and the fact that there was no ceremony around it. There was no goodbye. There was no celebration of life. There was nothing.
So we went back to go and have my mom's funeral. 25 people, my uncle's place in the middle of
Outside.
nowhere, outside. And my dad chickened out and said, oh, the neighbors might call the RCMP. We might get arrested if we're together. I'm like, well, Dad, if you're going to give them that power to do that, then so be it. We still went to Winnipeg. We visited everybody we needed to visit. And then we went to Makayla.
Our medium.
And we had like a, not a reading, but just like
a connection time.
Just a little thing for our kids and my mom. And
your mom's spirit came through, and it was a good thing that you and I did for us. I don't know how much the kids got out of it. Alora a little bit, Emma not at all.
Right.
But it was still something. It was our way, I guess, of putting a marker or an anchor down for a moment in time.
Yeah, for me, that was actually a great way to do a funeral or like a memorial for my mom. Even if the rest of my family wasn't there, it was nice to have that. And
so I was grieving your mom. I was grieving the ceremony that didn't happen because I felt its absence. I was grieving the loss of family members, of watching them turn on me because I hadn't gotten vaccinated, and turn on me because I was part of the Freedom Convoy. And there were so many things that I was grieving that I think that if I looked back on COVID time, that's the most prevalent emotion for me, was grief.
It's a sad time. And I know that if everybody honestly looked back, because we have hindsight, it's 2020, you look back and you know that it was a psychological operation, and it was
they forced us
tragedy.
They forced us to go inward, which I don't think that they were exactly banking on. But when you go inward, when you are forced to sit and be with yourself, just like in the grieving process, right? There is something that will emerge. Mm-hmm. Now, if you put the work in, if you work with those energies, then you're coming out the other side better, prepared for the next thing, the next version of you, so which I think you and I did. We came out really different than when we went in. And I look back now and I'm grateful for the grief, because without that, you and I might not be where we are right now.
Yeah. And I'll say it too. It's as much as I'll like bad talk it, it was one of the greatest things that ever happened for us. We grew even tight, like our bond was even stronger.
Because all of a sudden now you're working with me too.
Yeah. And we did great. Like we did amazing during that time. Like, and I feel terrible for all the people that it didn't work out for. But this is like, I'm just talking about our story. And for us, there was a lot of painful moments, but there was a lot of great growing moments. And we are the people we are now because of that.
Pain is a human thing. It's part of the human experience. I think that when pain arrives at your door, you answer it and then you lean into it because pain is coming to you as a teacher. Now, if it's physical pain, it's meant to say, hey, stop, something's happening in your body, let's figure it out. Intuitively, I'm not talking about running to the doctor. Like run your hands over your body and see where is it, where does the temperature change? Where does the energy shift? You're allowed to heal yourself. You're allowed to ask your body questions. So pain comes as a teacher. Sometimes pain comes as a guide to take you within to have this spiritual experience, because that's how you connect to source. That's how you connect to spirit. That's how you would connect to God.
I would say the greatest gift for me, looking back on it, is I'm a way more tolerant person now. I can talk to anybody about anything, and it's like a superpower now. I never had that before, and I owe it all to this cocoon time and coming out and rediscovering myself. Like this new version of me, I love this new version of me even more.
Right? And that's something that those vicious rats who put all of this together in the package of darkness and fear never anticipated. They did not anticipate that we would have this shift and push to awakening and ascension.
Yeah, I'm grateful for it. It's I might have stayed asleep forever.
Right? So I think that the point of all of this is when grief arrives at your door, answer the door with gratitude and lean in. Hunker down. Use this time as we're emerging or heading towards winter to burrow into the ground and into the comfort of Mother Earth and go within and see how you are going to change. What are the possibilities for you? Because they're always endless. We live in a world of limitless possibility.
I would say that I'm really happy that you're in my life, and you kind of opened up that grief a little bit. I don't want to live without you. That 3 weeks, that month, that was enough. It's like, okay, no, I get it. That's too much for my heart. You're stuck with me, and I was joking that I'm gonna outlive you, and I know for a fact that I will, and I will take that punishment when that time comes. But for now, I will take as much time as humanly possible with you.
Yeah, and it's funny because now how crazy is it that we allow 3D earthly things to get in the way of that?
Yeah.
Right? Because money is tight, like it is for everybody. The economy is doing crazy things and mortgage rates and blah, blah, blah. And we panic a little bit and it's like, okay, you're going back out into the world, into the real world to get a job. But that takes you away from me. The Yukon would have really taken you away from me, So I think that if that is our true north is our relationship, our connection, and anything that takes us away from that is probably not the right thing.
It's not the right thing.
Find your true north, lean into the grief.
And everybody has to appreciate their own journeys. Our journey is not your journey.
That's something that our daughter is learning right now. And she, from the age of 13, has been looking for her goose. And most 13-year-old boys are not ready to be a goose. They are not lifers.
Well, she's almost 17 now.
Okay, so now she's almost 17. She's found a really great guy, and she is already letting her mind build the life of what you and I have. It's funny listening to her say things like, oh, we just went for a walk the other day because that's something you and Dad do. And she used to make fun of me for that.
That is another episode.
Walk your way to a better marriage.
Yes, I honestly, walking is the secret, and I'm gonna write a book with you about it. And there is a lot of magic, but it's funny. You can't paint everyone with a broad stroke, and at the same time, I would say we're pretty average. So there's a lot of people out there like us.
Sure.
That we can, relate to.
Are we mid?
We're pretty mid. I'm cool with being mid yet awake. So I'm happy to be awake. It's as hard as it is sometimes. There's no going back. So why even dwell on your ignorance is bliss, and just now it's the enjoyment of learning, constantly learning and learning from other people and meeting people and discovering who we're going to be in the next 10, 15, 20 years. I'm excited about all of our evolutions.
I would like to say though, yesterday was 11/11. and I went to it. And I wasn't supposed to be there, but the universe was working for me and lined things up, and I ended up at an activation meditation. And I took Emma with me because she was interested, and I was so glad to do it. And during the activation, I don't even know if I told you this, but he mentioned that from years 0 to 12, every year is a new inner child personality.
Oh,
So I always assumed that I only had one inner child, and I was constantly working with this one. And maybe it was actually the same aged middle child that I was working with, but you can call on your age 10 middle child, age 4 middle child, and
inner,
what am I saying?
middle.
And yeah, no, your inner child. So you have 12 different personalities associated with your inner child.
Okay.
So all these personalities, like, can you imagine, like, you're in grief and you're worried because the personality that you've attached to that relationship, to that person, is dead, and you're grieving that, but you have to know there's another personality emerging. The next version of you is a next version of your personality.
Right, like the 12-year-old version of you is very different than the 8-year-old version of you. It's almost like having a younger brother at that point. Like
Right.
who that 8-year-old was. Like, you don't want to hang out with him anymore. You're too cool because you're 12.
So maybe that can be a comfort as you're in the grieving process, that you're grieving the loss of that relationship and the personality that's attached to that. But your soul goes on being the same soul it was and kind of creating a new personality around it. This new beautiful package of who you're meant to be in the next chapter.
It's interesting because I was thinking about this. This was actually coming to my mind too, about grieving the loss of innocence. As you are ascending, as you're learning new things, you are kind of scraping away the innocence of who you were before that.
Is it
Just
innocence or ignorance?
no, it's innocent. Like as a child too, like you thought that Santa was real, and then all of a sudden Santa gets murdered in front of
Except
you.
that we're not children now. So is it still innocence?
It's still innocence because we don't know any better. For the most part, everybody out there has no idea that almost everything is a complete lie, and they have to, I mean, this is a different podcast. This is Firmamental, but most of the things out there, like the news, it's all a lie. Politics, it's all a lie. And once you wake up to that, you realize, oh, wow, I have new eyes. Your innocence is gone to that. It's not ignorance, it's innocence.
Okay, I can get on board with that.
Yeah, because you're not doing it on purpose. You're not ignorant on purpose.
I would argue though that, and this is my issue with Firmamental, is that the lies, it's just a label. You're labeling it a lie. However, everything is energy. So the news and people's energy towards the news is just this growing ball of energy.
But when they tell you something that is untrue on purpose, that is a lie.
But I'm not listening to it. Why are you?
I don't listen to it anymore. But I'm telling you that these people get paid to steer people in certain directions, harvesting these guys are good, these guys are bad. If you believe this or if you believe this, you're on these different sides. It's all a division. It's all a division thing. And we all need to come together and realize that, yeah, we're all messed up. We're all people. But we're supposed to, seek enlightenment and be better and love each other and do good for this world.
I'm not interested in the lies though, because you're saying this is a lie without offering me the hope that comes alongside of that. Fine, it's a lie. What am I supposed to do with it? And because the danger in knowing that it's a lie is that it takes you down a dark tunnel. A dark tunnel of somebody else is controlling me and somebody else is controlling around there. I know the answer to this because that's my job as a light worker. But I'm saying a lot of people don't know that.
But the thing is, we don't need to go down the tunnel. I'm just saying there's a difference between innocence and ignorance. Let's take it back to that. We are all innocent. It's not our fault that our parents, our imaginary parents, told us these things to protect us, to help us feel better, so that we're happy in this world.
So you're grieving your innocence.
Grieving your innocence. Exactly.
I don't think I've ever grieved my innocence. I'm so happy to be awake and to know what I know.
I loved 5-year-old version of me who was excited about Santa coming, about, did you ever grieve that moment where Santa was just ripped away from you? That magic was gone?
Yeah. But I had younger siblings, so I was living it through them.
I think when we're kids, we just want to pretend to be cool. Like, oh yeah, now there's no Santa. Now we're just gonna go tell everybody that there's no Santa and help like rip the veil off and I'm cool. I can do this.
I think about the 5-year-old you, and I'm sad about it because of the emotional chaos and frustration in the house. And I'm glad that you had Santa at 5 years old to remember as a moment of positivity in your life.
Yeah, I mean, I'm grateful for my mom. She always made sure that we had great presents under the tree and Christmas was good. And that was a day where it wasn't a complete disaster. There was like few days that you can count on that weren't going to be a complete wreck. And I loved Sundays and I loved Christmas because I knew that those days were kind of like sacred in our house and they weren't going to be a complete train wreck. So there was there was a few days a year where I was very grateful. Yeah. And with that,
I guess that wraps up our conversation on grief.
not as much laughter in this one.
There couldn't have been, there just couldn't have been. Like, grief is a serious business.
For sure. But yeah, I think that this is probably the first of many discussions on this topic as well. Because it's important to point out the fact that it's not always sunshine, podcasts, and rainbows from Perfect Land. Right?
Right.
Okay. And with that, I hope that you geniuses have a great day. And we are going to see you on the next episode. And thanks so much for tuning in and listening to us babble on.